Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you're watching this. My name is Arthur Jones, and I am the founder of The Art of Standing Out. And The Art of Standing Out is where we use brand storytelling to help you market better and sell more stuff. And today we're in the Story Cafe, and I have an amazing guest, Anna McAfee. And she has accomplished so many things in such a short period of time. And I'm just talking about one thing that we're going to talk about, her accomplishments. I know she has many others, but we're going to talk about her experiences with LinkedIn, but more importantly, with community and community building. Anna is a community builder, an educator, and an author. And because I've committed to her that we're not going to try to make this into an hour and a half conversation, although I wish it could go that long because she has so much to share, that we're going to keep it short and sweet. So welcome, Anna, to the show. Thank you for your time, and good morning to you.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. And thanks for having me, Art. It's really lovely to be here. I just love the whole idea of a story cafe. I think it's fabulous.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I'm that guy that there's a movie that Bruce Willis was in years ago, and all of a sudden I can't remember the name, where the Holly Asmett, the young boy, said, "I see dead people." Well, I see stories in everyone, wherever I look. And I think I'm gifted that way. But I think it's really because my curiosity enjoys learning the narratives of people. And your narrative is really amazing because the arc of the story of LinkedIn Local begins with you. Can you tell us something about the beginning of the LinkedIn Local phenomena?
Look, I think I've always been a big believer and fan of LinkedIn, and 3.5 years ago, I found myself in my local city in Australia, which is a place called Coffs Harbour, which is a small regional city. We're about 70,000 people, and I was connecting with a lot of people on LinkedIn, but there were people who were very interesting, who some I met offline, but I was meeting them one-to-one and not at the typical networking events. And I put up a post about not many people using LinkedIn in the area, and a few people responded, and someone else on the post said, "Well, if it's so small, why don't we all meet up?" And I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. Why don't we have a local meetup? So the following week I put up a post and said, "I'm going to host a LinkedIn Local, event. Who wants to come? It's just a really casual coffee conversation. Let's just get to know each other offline, the people behind the profiles." And I had a really good response locally, and I think in some very, I think the universe was listening that day, because on the other people who saw that post were Eric Eklund in Brussels, Alexandra Galvez in London, and Swish Goswami in New York, he saw, I think, another post. It wasn't that specific one, but. And so we were kind of this, they all said, "Well, we're going to do this in our city. What a cool idea." So the four of us got together. We decided to run things in a very similar way. We all felt really strongly about keeping it pitch free and not for profit, and about community, rather than about, people getting up and selling. It was really just to kind of getting to know the people behind the profiles. And we all held events, and that went well. And then a few months later, a few more people, and then all of a sudden we just had this huge the influx of people coming to us. "We want to do this in our city. Will you help us? Will you help us?" Like, is there a way to find events? Is there a way to meet other hosts? Is there a way to, is there a process that you've got that we can follow to do this? Because what you've done is amazing. And we sort of said, okay, right, well, let's put something together. And sure enough, we did. So we put together a website and a mentoring process. And so for almost 2 years, we kind of managed this whole global community of hosts that was, I think, got to 96 countries under our tenure in less than 2 years, in about, I think, 850 cities. So
I like to think of myself as an innovator or an early adopter, but it was March of this year when I reached out to you when I heard about LinkedIn Local in Baltimore. And Melody Barron said, "Well, Art, if you're interested in doing a LinkedIn Local, you should probably call Anna McAfee." I said, okay, give me her number. She said, well, you probably want to connect with her on LinkedIn because she's in Australia. I'm like, what? And we had a great chat. And I think that you embody the ethos of what LinkedIn Local is all about, because when I called, this strange man calls and says, I want to do something with LinkedIn Local. We talked for a half an hour. You were so giving of what you know and what you experienced that I came away from that call saying, I can see why you were the genesis of LinkedIn Local, because if the mantra is just give, right, and collaborate and co-create, that's what happened in that 30-minute call that we had. I think it may have been longer, but that's why I continue to think about LinkedIn Local as a great vehicle for building community. But can you tell us why you think that LinkedIn Local worked so well over the course of the years that it's been in effect?
Look, I think the values were a really important thing for the spread of this, because, I mean, there are so many networking events in the world. And even now, when we can't meet face to face, there are still so many Zoom networking events in the world that you can go to, and online conferences. And they all have a set formula to follow. And it's that very kind of, well, here's my business card, here's who I am, and there's not really a lot of relationship building. They're all designed to, they're designed to connect people, but the premise behind them is that it's largely either a money-making vehicle as an event itself or something on the back of it. And there's they're not always particularly diverse, and they're not always, they can be quite exclusive. And the thing about LinkedIn Local was it really wasn't exclusive at all. We wanted either people to do free events or charge a fee just to cover costs. It was not about making money. And one of the reason we had that rule was because it had LinkedIn's name on it. But also we knew it would work if it wasn't. If people thought this was just a money-making vehicle, we wouldn't be attracting the right people who really wanted to build community. It was about bringing this to your city, creating this place for connection. And yes, a lot of hosts got, some personal branding and some social capital out of it, and that was part of why people did it, and why people still continue to do it. But it was really the values of not-for-profit, keeping it pitch free, because again, networking events traditional ones are very much designed for those that are primarily in sales roles, so business owners or people in business development roles. Whereas the LinkedIn community and the LinkedIn user community is people who aren't necessarily in those roles. They're HR managers, they're administrative assistants, they're job seekers who don't want to get up and do a 1-minute pitch or a 5-minute pitch. They just want to have conversations. And so designing an event that was pitch free, one, allowed people just to come together without feeling like they were there to be sold to, but also just to be themselves. And we also were quite clear that it's open to all LinkedIn users. So, and I think that really leveled, I guess maybe this is an Australian expression, but it leveled the playing field for a lot of people who, particularly with, say, exclusive women's events, or or there's a certain type of networking event in your city that is either predominantly white or predominantly male, and so whilst they're not saying you can go, you just know by reputation that that's sort of largely what the crowd is. Yeah. LinkedIn meant it really just, I'm on LinkedIn, so this is relevant to me. So because it's a global platform that we can all connect with, and it's full of diversity and stories and full of different ideas and people from different backgrounds. And so having the LinkedIn name on it did really even that playing field, and meant a lot of people would be interested in coming, because there was no other type of agenda or no other type of reputation on top of that.
I mean, I think if we were talking SEO right now, we'd look at the word map, right, and find out what the key word that's dominating the conversation. And you said several times, and I heard it loud and clear, it's about the people behind the profile, right?
That is probably the phrase I think that sent it viral. There's the two things. It was getting to know. We were very clear with our marketing that it said the LinkedIn Local is all about getting to know the people behind the LinkedIn profiles.
Mm-hmm.
That was the other one. And the second one was Eric Eklund, who added connecting humans to it. That was the hashtag LinkedIn Local, hashtag connecting humans.
And I think I remember our conversation, my conversation with Melody, my conversation with a fellow Brian Lobig, who's in Washington, D.C. area, who had gone to Melodies and was going to start his own. He's very big into BNI, which is kind of a global networking event, very successful in that domain. And he really had some really interesting ideas about LinkedIn Local. But I came away from my conversation with you and Melody thinking more about, let me back up and say, my intention as a brand story guy was brand strategy. It was my personal branding. I was polishing my own apple as being, right? That was my intention. But after the conversations that we had and finding out what other people were doing, I pivoted to making meaning more important than doing more for my personal brand. And I think that too is part of the ethos that lives in the people that lead the LinkedIn Locals. At least the ones I've spoken to, you and Melody, are really the two that I have spoken to the most. And if there's a fee that's charged, it's given to the local charity. And that's really important because I think it's 2020 and it's a crazy year. And what a year to use the synergy of community to make meaning in the challenged lives that some people are experiencing. So it really is great. And I don't want to wax poetic about the making meaning part, but talk about how you authored the book with your co-author that is a coalescence of what the journey was like and what was accomplished, why it was accomplished, and some of the stories that are baked into the book, because that's kind of a gift to the world that's going to keep on giving as far as it goes to community building. Can you share a little bit about that experience and what your intention with the book was and what you expect the follow-on to the book to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And the book was really about, I mean, what happened, it was almost 2 years after we started LinkedIn Local and running this crazy, volunteer community. I mean, we didn't ask for money. We didn't charge anybody for hosting. It was entirely, I want to host, right, join a call. We had mentors on calls, around the clock. We had this whole kind of system happening that literally made no money whatsoever. But whilst this was going on in the background, we had some conversations with one of the LinkedIn teams around how they could support us and vice versa. And we went to them with a lot of ideas, but I think it was a wrong time for LinkedIn to really be able to support that. So they issued some terms for all LinkedIn users. Anybody can be a LinkedIn Local host. You can use the logo, some great stuff, but they didn't include the values that we had set up. So LinkedIn Local can largely be whatever it wants to be. And it really meant that our role was no longer really needed in that process. So we took ourselves out of that as founders. And then I guess I went through this almost period of sort of semi-grief of like, we built this thing and now it's, it's not mine anymore. But ultimately, I'd had 2 years of people telling me how much this had changed their life. And Nicole Johnson, my co-author, who was involved in the sort of back end of the community, largely on the communication side, she would collate a lot of the host communications and things like that. So she was very familiar with everything that had been going on. And Nicole and I had a call one day, and I said to Nicole, and we talked about a book in the early days because it was such a good story, but as sort of looking back retrospectively, we were after a few months from those terms, I said to Nicole, I don't want these stories to disappear. They are all in my inbox. They are all just LinkedIn messages or conversations I've had with people. And I don't think people's stories like that should disappear. for no one to read or see. So we decided to put the book together, and the book is largely how it started, how we rallied a team together out of nothing and what we did. Then it shares about 60 stories from around the world, as well as some, some quotes from various cities. And then it goes into, I guess, the problems that we faced and the challenges we had, grassroots communities, volunteer communities, dealing with what LinkedIn might do with this. And then the chapter for the LinkedIn chapter is called a corporate conundrum. Because it was a conundrum. It really was. I'm not sure that they knew what to do with it. And still to this day, I'm still not sure that they know what to do with it. But, and then it was really just a kind of thanks to everyone who was involved. And, so it was me looking back on it, I guess, in past tense. It's very much still a present tense thing for cities that can meet offline, and for a lot of cities who are now doing online events. So the purpose of the book was to really tell those stories. And there's stories from Africa, from the US, from Australia, from all corners of the world. But they largely tell either in three parts, the stories about a sense of belonging, and actually finding those people that you feel like you really belong with. The second chapter of stories is around career change. So people who've sort of found their purpose and went on to do something, be it career coaching or, finding building a bit of a personal brand and finding a place in the world in a professional sense in that second part. And then the third part is social impact. So Baltimore, we've mentioned, Baltimore raised $30,000 for living classrooms up until the end of last year. So stories about, in Vietnam, about supporting, the human trafficking side, and some really, really special stories in amongst. And there's a little bit for everybody. There's a lot of diversity stories. There's a transgender story in the book. There is people who really didn't feel like they had a place in the world until they found this.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's amazing.
And so it was, it's a book about the power of just one community.
It's, we're talking to Anna McAfee, community builder, educator, and author. And I'm having a great time just having this conversation. And I'm sad that I committed to 30 minutes and we're getting near the end already. And darn it. A couple of key words though. I'll go back to people behind the profiles is kind of the intention. But you just revisited and reframed the intention in the book, which is representative of the communities that's now global. Belonging, career change, and social impact were three things that are outgrowths of the LinkedIn local movement.
Mm-hmm.
Those are powerful ideas: belonging, career change, and social impact. The title of the book is How a Hashtag Changed the World, and it's on Amazon. So if you're listening live or watching on replay, go get this book if you want to know about belonging, career change, and social impact, and how a hashtag enabled those three miraculous things to happen. Kind of breathe life into something that didn't exist before a hashtag was posted online, and now you have this great movement.
And I think, it was a very simple idea, but often the simplest ideas are the best. Why wouldn't LinkedIn connections meet offline locally? Like, really, you look back and think, why hadn't somebody else done it? And actually they just hadn't either used a hashtag or done it with a few other people in other cities, so it appeared to be a movement. There's LinkedIn meetups aren't new. People have been having them for a long time, but there was just something about this one that, the bringing together of the values and ultimately it was a few leaders and the LinkedIn local story. And I think really the story of any thriving community is down to its leaders, and it's not just about its founders, but its leaders that come along and get nurtured into. Leaders, and what LinkedIn Local did as a vehicle for anything, it did for activating people who wanted to lead, who just either needed a little bit of help or wanted to do it not on their own but with other people. They were leading in their local cities.
There's a show I've done with a colleague, and we were talking about many things, but we realized after a half dozen shows we were always leaning into leadership as being an important element of all the conversations that we had. And what you just described about you in Australia, Eric in UK, and someone else in New York, that kind of were the genesis, the catalyst for this thing to blossom. It's leadership, because if it had not been three leaders, the chemical reaction would not have.
Yeah, you've got Alex in there. Alex was in the UK, and Eric was he's in Barcelona now. He was in Brussels, but
okay.
But yeah, it was. But it wasn't just them as leaders. It was everyone along the way. It's people that a lot of us on LinkedIn know, like Lila Smith, like Matt Gagnon, who got involved, like Bobby Umar in Toronto, who people didn't. I mean, the movement spread not because people were necessarily following us. They were following other people like those that I've mentioned, and hundreds more, who they looked up to as a leader, and then followed them. And that, that's how if you want to study it as a movement, I mean, that's how it happened. It wasn't that, and people still came back to that central point, but we enabled leadership in other places that inspired other people to follow. There's a really good TED talk, and it's actually only about a 4-minute one, I think, by and I talk about it in the book, and why I've just got a mental blank in my head. It's called How to Start a Movement. The name will come to me in a second.
Okay.
I've watched it hundreds of times. Why I can't think of Derek. Anyway, if you can't find it, How to Start a Movement TED Talk, Google that. But it talks about, it's not somebody comes out dancing at a festival and that person is like the lone nut.
I've seen that video. I've seen that.
And
he's on the hillside.
True.
He's on the hillside. He's dancing by himself, and before you know it, everybody on the hillside and the entire concert is up on their feet dancing.
Yeah, and it's not, the leaders were actually the two people that followed, and in my case, it was LinkedIn Local was the three people that followed. I was just this lone nut, as he describes it, and they were the leaders because they stepped up. And so leadership isn't always about starting something. Leadership can sometimes being the first, the second, the third, the fourth follower. Let's
pivot to talking about from leadership to community, what it is and is not. And to kick this off, I've been lurking on your LinkedIn profile, and I've found an interesting post that you authored that had a lot of commentary, people chiming in. And I said, let me read this one. And the theme was, your community is not your following. Let me say that again. Your community is not your following. And just that line speaks volumes. Can you tell us about the article and the reaction to it and your intention?
Yeah, actually, it isn't an article. I should make it an article. It was just a LinkedIn post. That's a good idea. But ultimately, community is this buzzword that's been thrown around, and it's been used very incorrectly, as a lot of buzzwords do get used incorrectly. But it's a few very technical things, definitions of community. But I think one of the reasons this happened is because there were a few CEOs in a company who said, we need a social media manager. And they're like, oh, that's not a good name. Let's just call them a community manager. So even, a lot of large organizations will have a community manager that just manages the social media accounts. And that's not always the case. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of community managers that really do manage community.
Yeah.
But a following is not a community, because in order for there to be a community, there needs to be a connection among the people. And sure, you can connect with people in the comments of somebody's post, but there's no ongoing connection. And there's no sense of a safe place. You're in a public forum. There's no sense of shared values. Okay, the post might be about a particular value and you're connecting with those people, but there's no sense of ongoing connection amongst a following.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you put those people in a group, a lot of groups aren't communities either, because they don't, there's not a lot of connection happening within that group. There's a people there. They're fairly quiet. They're often a speaker to audience scenario. And certainly with followings, you do have that speaker to audience scenario. It's my following is I'm standing here talking about something and you guys are in an audience listening to me. Communities are more about campfire conversations. It's a round table or sitting around a campfire. And followings do not create that kind of scenario. And they don't have the rituals that community have. They don't have that sense of shared purpose or values. They simply are just people that you follow. And so, but it's people talk about my community all the time, like welcome to my community or thank you for being a part of my community. And whilst that is such a lovely phrase, it's broken the meaning of what a community actually is, which is a place that you feel like you belong. You can like somebody's content and really identify with it, but it's not a community.
Shared purpose sounds like a key word in what a community is. And again, 2020 being the mad year it's been, the communities that are vibrant and supportive and that rejuvenate and lift you up are the ones where you're collaborating with people. You're not being led by anyone. The community is almost like an organism in and of itself that is just supportive and it has a shared purpose. And the shared purpose oftentimes is just caring about the person to your left and to your right and in front of you and in back of you. There's somebody that you know commented on that post that you wrote on LinkedIn, and I'll just read a little bit of it because I think he says it better than I could. Community is a place of mutual support, shared values, and multi-directional dialogue. It is a safe place to reflect, create, and grow. Community stands for something and holds both individuals and the group as valuable. As such, it provides boundaries and guidelines for interactions to allow all to thrive. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I'll take Neville Starrick for that. Yes.
And I encourage everybody, buy the book. The book will share some great ideas about belonging, change, and social impact. But while you're waiting for Amazon to deliver your book to your door or to your Kindle, go to Anna's LinkedIn profile or to her website and take a look at some of the posts that she's got, because we've only scratched the surface on what Anna believes about community, because you have to believe that several years ago when this phenomena happened, she said, what's going on? And she became a student of community and community, what it means to be in a community and what it means to nurture a community so it can thrive. And if you want to know some of those tips and gain that kind of perspective, which I think we all need now in 2020 and certainly beyond in this crazy, wild world we live in, community is the one thing we all can hold on as a safe place. And as somebody you want to know to get to know and learn those things. So there's her website, trailing and scrolling across the bottom of the screen. My timer, I think it's been past our 30 minutes, but I couldn't help but go a little further because I just so enjoy this conversation. I so honor you for being the catalyst for what became LinkedIn Local, but more importantly for me, being a beacon that people can look to learn about community building going forward, and community nurturing, I guess, is probably a better term. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Art. It was great.
Anything you want to tell the audience, live or in replay, that's coming up?
Look, my community Kickstarter program has closed, so I can't tell you about that, but that will be happening again next year. But look, I'm writing a lot on Substack over the coming few months. I have a lot of interesting and fun stuff coming there, more than what you can see now. So if you're keen to follow that, it's localx.substack.com, and that will get you to actually my website. I think you can sign up there too. But yeah, there's some fun stuff coming, and there's some story stuff coming too as well around communities, which is a part of the book I really loved, which was the collecting of stories. So there's going to be a series coming on Substack soon.
Well, that sounds exciting. Something to look forward to. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Anna, for sitting in the square next to me and sharing of your experiences and wisdom. And tune in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, whether it's the Story Cafe or Sales by Design. I'm here with somebody interesting with thought-provoking ideas to share to help us all be smarter so we can all accomplish more. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Until next time, I'm Art Jones, the founder of The Art of Standing Out, signing off. Bye for now.
Thanks, Art. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Anna.